Hello, world. It's Brigantia Blackbird of Blackbird's Brew. Well, here we are. Happy Tuesday. And much more importantly, today is Mother's Night, which, with my own personal traditions, I count this as the beginning of the 12 days of Yuletide. Now, if you are familiar with any kind of pagan lore, you'll know that the winter solstice is also a time that is traditionally held to be the birth or the rebirth or the symbolic renewal of the sun and deities that are associated with the sun. Now, because I'm working with the Norse pantheon these days, I am thinking, of course, of Balder, who is a very solar like deity. And with Mother's Night, I'm thinking of his mother, Frigga, or Frigga, she's more often called, and just how this is the moment when he comes into being. He's resurged, he's re-empowered. Yeah, the sun is now from this point forward going to be gaining in strength, even though it will be a few months before we really start feeling the effects of that. But I mean, I guess that's just life. Something happens and then it takes a little while for us to really feel the impact of it. But as we are entering into some rather nasty depths of winter, it's nice to have that actively in our minds, as we are in the midst of this darkness on the longest night of the year, waiting for that rebirth of the sun. And we have our lights and we have our candles and we're doing all of these things, waiting for that moment of renewal and then keeping that little flame and that spark of hope alive within us and starting to look towards the future of whatever challenges that we're facing this season, no matter what we're going through. We are focusing again onto the future. And that's really what we've got to do. And I've been in a very reflective, contemplative mood. That's the wonderful thing about the longer you are actually practicing, not just studying, not just analyzing your spirituality from an academic context, but when you are actually doing the thing, you fall into these natural rhythms a lot more easily. That's why I've always recommended anyone who is interested in Wicca or just kind of broadly pan spectrum pagan to just get into the groove with the wheel of the year, thinking about what those celebrations really represent, different variations of them that you can find in different cultures throughout Europe and honestly, even throughout various parts of the world, you will see some kind of cycle that is similar, even though it's not exactly the same. But you'll see it representing these cycles of nature, and it allows you to get more into that flow. And it gives you also a starting point for your practices about what does this time of year mean? What has it meant in the past? What are you observing right now? And how can you use that as fuel for what you're doing as you're preparing for the future? Because right now we're kind of going into this time of rest. We're in the dream state. We're in this we're in this sleeping kind of world where everything is still. And what we should really be doing is huddling next to a fireplace, trying to stay as warm as toasty as what we possibly can, and just enjoying it, enjoying the break from all the hustle and bustle, if we could possibly do that. And that is one sad thing about our modern world. It just is not structured for us to take the break that nature really intended for us to have. So, whatever efforts we can make towards creating that break for ourselves or creating an oasis for ourselves, that would be something that we might find to be extremely helpful. I know a lot of people have been bringing up the subject of and the concept of hygge again. It's a Danish concept of comfort and well-being and having everything being very cozy and warm and companionable, and different Scandinavian countries have different words for the same concept, but it's essentially covering the same basic idea. Are you focused where you are supposed to be? Have you taken care of your necessities? Have you shored up and made sure that the house is warm? Are you paying attention to your loved ones and really using this time when the weather makes it unfit to do much of anything else? Are you focusing on them? Are you cultivating those relationships? Are you allowing yourself to be reminded that those family relationships, your marriage, your friends, that this is really what life is all about? It isn't so much about the kinds of material success we can create for ourselves, even though material success, admittedly, it does make life easier in many respects. But if we don't have anyone to share that with, if we aren't using that in some kind of productive way to where it is further perpetuating life and enriching life, then I think it does bring up questions of what is it that we're exactly striving for. So there's a lot to think about, and there's a lot of different things to do. And I hope everyone's had a chance to spiff up their house as much as what their circumstances permit them, and that as you're looking around, you're feeling it. You're enjoying the aesthetic beauty of this season. You are starting to feel all the warm spiritual vibes that go along with this season, and that you're feeling centered. I feel like there's a great need to be centered right now, to be grounded right now. It's been a rough few years. I think this year in particular, it has been a year of great disillusionment, and I plan on getting into that a little bit into future live streams. But I just, it just seems that so many times in the past few months we've been confronted with, I thought the world worked in a particular way, and now I'm seeing this evidence over and over again that it actually doesn't, and perhaps it hasn't during the whole course of my lifetime, and certainly not in recent years, and is just becoming much more blatant. That's a lot to take in, because that question then arises: okay, I've noticed this. What do I do about it? Even if you have found like-minded people who are also noticing the same things that you are, it still comes to that idea of, well, what do we do about it? And that's why I think this particular solstice season is very important for us all on the spiritual level, just because this is that moment for rebirth of, okay, all of these things have happened. The seasons have come and gone. Everything's taken its toll. Things have come to fruition. And now the sun is reborn, and I need to figure out how I'm going to walk in that light. So we have lots to do in the coming year. But before we have future conversations about all that, I want to touch on a subject that comes up with increasing frequency within pagan communities. It's when people are asking for people to give them good energy or to send them happy vibes or things of that general nature. And I've been concerned for the past 5-ish years that it's starting to sound a little bit like people you see on the internet asking for thoughts and prayers, or offering their thoughts and prayers, and that they're not actually praying for anyone. And that a lot of people, when they're asking for the thoughts or the prayers, they're seeking sympathy. They're not actually asking for additional communal strength in order to help them face the challenges that they're having to face. And I don't really want to see the pagan community go this way if we can at all prevent it. So here is my rebuttal to that. And first of all, let's cover what that actually means, both to ask for good energy and to actually be sending that good energy. Because first and foremost, this is more than just merely wishing someone well or saying, "Oh, I really hope things work out for you." This is an act. Essentially, it is asking someone to give you an energetic transfusion, much like if someone suffers a severe bodily injury and then they're bleeding out, and then they're going to need a blood transfusion, and so you go to the blood bank or you get a volunteer, and they're able to donate the blood, and it helps the patient recover. Now, in order for that literal blood transfusion to be effective, you've got to first make sure that you have stitched up the wound and somewhat stabilized the patient. Because otherwise, if you haven't stitched up that wound, they're still bleeding. You can hook up an IV and you can give them all the blood transfusion that you want to, but it's not going to do the patient any good, because it's just going to flow right on out. You have not actually solved a problem. And that's something that I would primarily want to bring to everyone's attention. If someone is asking for good energy, or if you're asking for it, or you're thinking about it, have you done what you need to do to close up that energetic wound, whatever is draining you? Whether this is something that is an internal struggle of yours, or if there's just someone you're around and you have to be around them a lot for whatever reason, and it just feels like just being around them is just draining the very life out of you. Have you done anything to actually address that situation? Because until you have solved that core problem, what caused the energy drain to begin with, people could be sending you good vibes all day and night long. I mean, but it's ultimately not going to make a difference to you. Yes, if someone is successfully channeling energy to you, you might feel a little bit of a boost. You might feel okay for a little while, but give it a few hours, a few days, a few weeks, and you'll be right back in that same position asking for that extra special support again, because you didn't actually solve the problem. So that's something that I would encourage people to keep in mind when it comes to these askings for energy. The second thing I would to keep in mind is that you are essentially asking someone for a transfusion. That is a big thing to ask. And if someone is kind enough to accommodate you, I think it is important to honor that gift and to I don't want to exactly say to recognize that you have a debt to that person. I don't really like that phrasing. I don't think that's a really good way to phrase it. But I would think that acknowledging that they have given you something that you were unable to provide for yourself during a time of crisis, and realizing that you are needing to reciprocate that good deed in some fashion. Now, if people are very good at supporting each other and they have that very good reciprocal relationship, then that's less of an issue. For example, one of my frequent co-hosts, Georgia Liberty, and also Amanda Cox, who is frequently on both Georgia's channel and mine. We have what we call the wavelength, and somehow or another, all of our energy has gotten all kinds of tangled up in the ether. And a lot of times, what's affecting one or two people is that the other person is coming aware of it. That's why a lot of times our live streams are very free flowing, and we don't have to do a lot of prep work. It's because energetically we're all tied up, and we have this growing sensitivity, and because it's there. And because there is a lot of mutual support, it's come to be this very healthy spiritual support system for all three of us, even though none of us are practicing the exact same thing. And of course, Amanda's in an entirely different religion. But because there's reciprocity, because everyone is concerned about giving and not just taking, it really works out well. So that's the dynamic that has to be built up. And another thing about channeling is that if you are essentially a donor, realize that simply thinking nice things about the person, you haven't actually channeled energy to them. And this is where someone's training in witchcraft or their lack of training really begins to show. Because with channeling, you are opening up essentially a corridor between yourself and the person you are channeling to. And this holds true whether you are channeling energy to another human being, or if you are trying to contact someone who is beyond the veil, or if you're directing it towards a deity, or even an animal. Are you trying to, if your animal, say your pet's sick and you're wanting to channel some healing vibes towards them, you are still opening up a corridor. Then you are having to take energy out of your own system and push it through that corridor, and to see to it that it gets to the appropriate target. And when this actually occurs, it does rather resemble the feeling of a blood drain going out of your body. So this is not a small thing. And it's definitely not something you could do over and over and over again in a huge major way. You need to make sure that you engage in some practices of self-care. Is that once you have channeled the energy, you are closing off that corridor again, it shields up, and you start to do things to rejuvenate yourself. Grounding meditations, centering meditations, taking a long hot cleansing bath, making sure you're eating particularly well for the next few days, drinking properly. And I mean like water, tea, things that are relatively healthy. I'm not talking about getting out a bottle of whiskey and just downing the lot. This is a different sort of drinking that we're discussing here. But making sure that you are taking care of yourself. And of course, if you are the person who has received that channel energy, display your gratitude for that person. If you are feeling that benefit, let them know. I mean, not just a thank you, but, essentially try to do some kind of good deed for them. I think that would be a healthy practice to build up, no matter what pagan community that you happen to be in, and to just kind of acknowledge the values of those gifts, because that is a pretty personal thing to ask. So that's kind of my thoughts on that topic. So now the big chill. I have been seeing some of the weather reports lately, and they've been doing their best to kind of scare the bejesus out of us, haven't they? Now, granted, it is definitely going to be much colder than what it usually is this time of year for many, many locations. I'm not looking forward to that particular point. But let's try to be calm, try to be sensible. I mean, it wouldn't hurt to be a little bit more prepared for our own sake, just because even if we're calm, that doesn't mean, the Yahoo down the road is behaving in anything that even remotely resembles sanity. So, bearing that in mind, just real winters come, winters go. I mean, yes, this is early for us to get these really low temperatures and negative wind chills, and starting to get piles and piles of snow. It's a bit early in that time of year, but I'm sure most of us could look back and see that there was this winter one year where things like this did happen, or that, maybe we don't usually get this in December, but, come January and February, this is kind of the usual deal. And just kind of comfort ourselves. Look, we're not going through anything particularly unusual. The only thing that's particularly odd is the timing. And I, for one, am really hoping I get some snow out of the deal. I only started celebrating holidays in 2013 because of my Jehovah's Witness background. And so since that time, I have yet to experience a Yule or a Christmas that has snow. So my inner 5-year-old is just kind of, yay. Now, I don't want to be completely selfish in this because I know it is scary for a lot of people. Because, I mean, there's going to be more of a strain on the power grid. I know a lot of people have some questions and concerns about what if something were to go down? Am I so sure that I'll be able to keep the household warm? Are we going to have issues if we have a power outage for any kind? I mean, not everyone has a handy wood burning stove or a wood fireplace. So, I mean, I get it. It is a little bit scary. But at the same time, let's not let that fear of what might happen get in the way of us focusing on what is within our power to do about it. So whatever your circumstances are, just try not to worry so much about what might happen. Only think about what needs to be done. And by what needs to be done, I'm talking about what you need to do to take care of you and yours. You can't solve the problem for the whole world, but if you are focusing on taking care of yourself and your family, being a good neighbor, being a good friend in times of need, then that means that there's a little circle of people who, they have a game plan that, okay, we're going to do this if the power goes out. We have extra blankies just in case. And, I've put some extra insulation around our pipes to minimize the risk of them freezing. And since it's going to be so ridiculously cold anyway, how about a baking day? We'll just bake cookies all day. We'll keep that oven running and things of that nature. Have a game plan, because if you have a plan about what you might do, then not only once the bad weather comes is it not going to be as scary as what it ordinarily would be, but also, you're more focused. You're thinking about solutions. How do I solve for this problem? And we might have a few days where we're a bit uncomfortable, or we're kind of struggling to make sure the house is as warm as what we would like it to be. But at the end of the day, we're gonna make it. We're gonna be okay. We will get through this. And of course, once this nasty slap in the face of winter gets it over with, that'll make the rest of the normal winter days feel a bit milder. Like, oh, okay, this isn't so bad. I can go out and I can do something. I don't normally go out and hike in the woods this time of year, but 32 degrees is so much more pleasant than -5. So maybe I will take a short little walk, and it'll be fine, and I'll actually enjoy the season. So there is a way to turn this on its head, and honestly, if you are glued to whether it's the TV or social media or whatever else, and it's all the doom and the gloom and what's going to happen if, and we're all going to die, you need to know when to walk away from all of that. It's so easy to sensationalize. And I say this as a person who's not afraid to tackle pretty serious subjects that have pretty long term and long reaching consequences. I'm definitely not afraid of doing any of that. But there has to be a point where you say, okay, the people who are on this channel, or they're doing this or that, they are just focusing on the fear and they are ramping that up. And they're not really talking about solutions. Not for the immediate future, and not for any contributing factors that are making life a little bit difficult. Maybe those are the voices, the ones that aren't focused on solutions. Maybe those aren't the ones to listen to. That's just a thought that I'm throwing out there into the universe. And I think it would be good for us all to kind of, in the coming year, re-examine our relationship when it comes to our information sources of whether we are looking for information or we are looking for brainstorming ideas about how to tackle problems, whether it's, unplugging a clogged up drain in the kitchen sink, something very mundane and everyday like that, or if it's dealing with some of the larger problems in our country. If people aren't talking about solutions, if they aren't saying, there's a way forward, and even small actions can help propel us to that forward motion. If it's just about, how doomed we are, maybe we need to think about why we're there. And I do come back to this, and I also come back to the idea of community. I mean, we are just drowning in information, and we are drowning with all of these social media platforms where people are constantly talking at us, but we have very few people talking with us. And that's one of the reasons why I love Gilded so much, because it allows for the possibility for people to talk with each other and to have back and forth conversations and to say, okay, I have about an hour so I can sit down and I can chat, and maybe it'll be about everyday things. Maybe it'll be about something really interesting or deep or spiritual or all this other stuff. But it says that, just for this moment, I'm going to spend my time focused on like-minded people and having that oasis and starting to get to know one another, uh, having a real exchange where it isn't about one-upmanship, or here's how clever I am, or here's how not clever they are, and all this other stuff. If we can reforge those bonds, I think that'd be an excellent step forward, which is why, again, I really like the setup on Gilded as opposed to things, because essentially all the other social media platforms, they're either a variation of Facebook or Twitter, or they are a variation of YouTube. And that, again, that doesn't allow for the back and forth. And speaking for back and forth, we have this from Jessie Cat 31. Happy Yule to you too. Oh, very nice to see you. I hope you are in the midst of your preparations for the big celebration. I'm really looking forward to Yule this year, even more so than I ordinarily do. It's that time. And that's another great thing about when we do come together in community, and when we are starting to have a little bit more of the back and forth. We are able to say things like Happy Yule. We are able to talk about, what are your plans, and to not have to go through someone else's filter without having to go through explanations or anything else like that. It's just like, oh, I'm cooking this, that, or the other this year, or we've decided we're going to get up really early and watch the winter solstice sunrise, or I'm going to be making this offering to my deceased ancestors tonight, or all these other things. And just to know that the other person you're talking to knows what you're actually referring to. I mean, that's a really wonderful thing. I mean, and we now have the technology to do it, so we're not so dependent on does anyone in our area, or do they share our faith, or anything that is kind of adjacent to it. And that's another thing, is that I know that going the social media way to start forging communities, of course that's not ideal, and I don't present that as this perfect solution or the end all be all, but I see it as a step. It's like one of the things that Dr. Jordan Peterson has said on many occasions. Do you want something enough to do it badly first? Because what he meant by that, are you willing to take the first step, even though it might be rough or very unsophisticated or not come out right or whatever else? Even if you're not good at it, are you willing to at least take that first step forward and then keep going along and learning through trial and error and experience, and taking all of that in until you finally have figured out how to do something well? Are you willing to go through that effort? Because if you are, then a lot of things become possible. And I really see social media and online communities like the ones we have on Gilded, to be that step in the right direction. Let's get in the habit of talking to each other, not only about everyday things or deep spiritual matters, but just kind of on a human level. Are we willing to make friends with each other? Because if we plant the seeds there, then that starts raising the possibilities of, oh, I've been talking with these people for a couple of years now. Is there kind of this center meeting point? Is there any kind of national park where we might meet up at, or say hello, or maybe attempt to do a ritual together, or have some kind of meetup? It allows for that possibility. And then once people meet up and they see each other face to face, and they figure out, okay, I actually do get along with these people. We have a lot more in common. We are sharing values. We are living a very similar kind of life. And then once you realize that, then it starts being, can we start making this a tradition? Are we going to start focusing our resources in this direction? And then as your sphere of acquaintance kind of expands, hopefully your circle expands, and then you also meet other people who are perhaps closer to you. And then the next thing we know, we are seeing a modern pagan resurgence in which, if people want to reach out to community, that they're not having to go as far. It's not as hard. And we're laying the groundwork for that. We're doing a lot of foundational works. There are some people like the Fellowship of Northern Traditions. The Wisdom of Odin channel talks about that a lot. He was one of the founding members. I mean, that's the work they've been doing, and they laid out a good roadmap, because their focus has always been about that spiritual commonality. Who wants to sit down and talk about the gods? Who wants to read the stories? Who wants to share what they think? Who wants to go through their theories and talk about how this impacted their life? Who wants to go out into the woods and meditate together? Who wants to practice this faith? And I think that's one of the reasons why they've been a successful group. And I think other pagan groups that have kind of that same general approach, I think that's why they will ultimately be successful if they choose to persevere. And that's why I hope eventually the Blackbirds Brew and Gilded will also be successful, because we're saying, we're the doers. We're the people who aren't just reading about paganism or books. We're not admiring pretty pictures on Pinterest, and we're not, drowning ourselves in academia, trying to, kind of get our street cred for how serious we are. No, no, we are actually living pagan lives, and we're acting in accordance with pagan philosophy, and that makes a huge difference. And so I'm hoping that as time goes on, we will have more people join our crowd. And in that vein, one of the things I've been trying to do lately is to give the server a little bit of a reorganization and trying to expand the range of what it can do. Because we do need a place for kind of like information dump of, I did this research, or I found this link and I found this sort of thing. And and so I want to make sure that we have that information available for anyone who's interested in it, anyone who might be useful. We also need to have places for casual conversation, places for more in-depth conversations. And so that has led to a few little tweaks I've been making. And I thought this is a good time to do it, because a lot of people are busy right now with all of their holiday preparations and doing all the things. So I thought, while everyone's kind of in and out a little bit more than usual, this would be a good time to clean out the closet. And Jesse Cat 31, that's a beautiful plan, future to strive towards and manifest. Yes, I think we're 100% in that same mindset, because I think that's what it comes all about, of us actually having a reintroduction of essentially of a pagan civilization. And where else better to have that than in the United States? When you think about it, the ideas that founded the United States, the idea of self-governance, you're in charge of yourself, you're responsible for yourself. That's a very pagan virtue. The idea of a decentralization of power, so that's very much in line with the idea of a polytheistic mindset. We have multiple deities that have responsibilities for different areas of life and different capabilities, different talents, different interests. It's very much a right tool for the right job kind of approach. So there's a lot of commonalities there that I think could potentially make the United States a good place for a furtherance of the pagan revival. And of course, we can't forget our cousins in Europe and elsewhere in the world, because they are living on the soil of where, of the origins of so many of our stories and traditions actually took place. And, I think we need all of their traditions. I think we need their access to the scholarship done in those countries, to the actual sites that remain in those countries. I think we need them, and we need everything that can be learned from there. And we also need kind of the American approach of, I'm going to experiment with something until I find something that works attitude as well. And we need these things to come together and meld a little bit. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so glad that on my channel and in the brew that we do have a member who is from overseas, and that's incredibly invaluable. I certainly hope he won't be the last. But yeah, that's what we're doing, gang. And that's pretty much all that I really had to say. I've been talking for nearly 30 minutes. So thank you for hanging out with me. I forgot to put the links in the description, but I did put a lot of links into the live chat, and I will go back to the videos on YouTube, and I will pin a comment and make sure that we do have the link to the Gilded group up, because I want to expand. I want people to explore our new forums. I want people to get to know each other. I want us to have a little bit more back and forth. And I hope more people will start coming to our Wednesday night chats. And before I go, I will say that there will be a Wednesday night chat on Yule, because so many of us are essentially Yule orphans. We're practicing on our own. So I thought, even though we will probably all be doing our own individual observances and rituals throughout that day and night, if we come together for a couple of hours, if you're able to, enter the group chat where we have the voice and the video capabilities, and we're able to just kind of relax, celebrate together. If you want to toast the season, I'm bringing a bottle of wine. I have no promises whatsoever to be entirely sober tomorrow evening, but just to take the moment to enjoy each other's company, to celebrate together, maybe swap stories or talk about our own favorite traditions. Or, if you really feel up to it, if you found a pagan Yuletide carol and you want to sing, we can do that too. And no, you don't have to be sober if you need a little bit of liquid courage to do that. So we'll see what happens, and we'll see just what we get up to. So that's all I got for right now. I will see you guys later. Bye-bye.